Elijah was discouraged, and understandably so. He had a really, really rough job. God had called him to be a prophet, to proclaim a message of judgment and repentance against the Israelites. But it turns out that people living in 9th century BC didn't like being called to account any more than people do today. Again and again, they heard his cries, and then nobody really responded to him. And to Elijah, it probably seemed like his mission had been a complete failure, so no one listened to him. But Elijah had other reasons to be discouraged, too. Elijah was lonely, spending a lot of his life by himself. God tucked him away in this little Kerith ravine for years in the midst of a drought, where his only company was a bunch of unclean birds and a babbling brook. Then Elijah traveled to Zarephath, where he encountered a lonely Gentile widow and her son. He spent some time with them. Elijah went on to confront the prophets of Baal, and he did this all alone. It was basically him against 1,000 other people. Those are not very good odds at Mount Carmel. And then finally, when Jezebel tries to kill him in this other part of his story, he flees to the wilderness. He lays down under a tree, and he basically begs God to put him out of his misery. And man, Elijah was more than discouraged, right? In today's terms, we would probably say he was clinically depressed. But God's response to Elijah is shocking. We might expect him to tell Elijah to buck up and to get over it, or tell him to be stronger, or even to remind him of his duties as a prophet. But he doesn't. Instead, God gives him this advice. He says, take a nap and eat some cake. Best advice in the world, right? This is no joke. God sends an angel to bake Elijah some cakes and to give him some water. And the angel says this, arise and eat, for the journey is too great for you. What is God up to here? Well, he's acknowledging Elijah's pain, isn't he? God doesn't deny it or belittle it or tell him, it's really not all that bad. And so many people have it so much worse, Elijah, get over it. Instead, he meets Elijah right where he is, and he affirms the reality of his suffering. He says, I see you. And you're right, the journey is too great for you. You're discouraged, and that discouragement is legitimate. Like, you can't do this on your own. That's why you need me. God takes compassion on his servant, and he provides what he needs in the moment, and it's really much more simple than we might think. Elijah didn't need marching orders at that time, at least. He needed sympathy and sustenance. And it came in the form of some cake and a nap that empowered him to continue on with his mission. Man, we are easily discouraged people, aren't we? We lose sight of God, we distrust his promises, we forget that he is all-powerful and all-sufficient, and that he is the one shouldering the weight of the world on his back, not us. In fact, he carried it all the way to the cross. So I don't know where you're at today. I don't know if you're feeling discouraged or depressed in any way, but I do know this. God isn't waiting for you to crawl out of that pit on your own. He descends into that pit with you. He takes hold of your hand with his nail-scarred hand, and he grips you fiercely, and he says, I see you, I love you, and you are not alone. And then he puts you on his shoulders, and he carries you to safety. So take a lesson from Elijah. Eat some cake, take a nap, and trust that the Lord has got this.